Thank you for logging on to monstergardens.com. Today we're going to be talking about HydroLogic filters. Now HydroLogic has come out with a few different filters for different applications, and what we have here is sediment filters, charcoal filters, and RO filters. Now what we're going to do is just talk about each individual filter and what application it might be used for, so you can have an idea of what the best filter is for your application. Now if you're on city water, it's very important to know this. Chlorine isn't typically used anymore. It's chloramine. And what chloramine is the chlorine molecule attached to an ammonia molecule. Typically, you would be able to allow water to breathe off its chlorine by leaving it out in the open for a matter of days. Chloramine does not breathe off. So it's important to know, most places, your water is going to have chloramine, so it will not breathe off. So it's very important, especially if you're using beneficial bacteria or beneficial fungi, to be using a dechlorinator. Now if you're on a well system, obviously chlorine isn't in your water, so you would just be looking at a sediment filter. The Big Boy is an awesome dechlorinator that actually allows up to a 7 gallon per minute output. So you can water directly out of this chlorinator without it bogging down your water pressure. These Flowmasters are really cool tools that you can put in line with your filters to find out how much water has run through it, so you know when it's time to change out your filter. The Small Boy is a much smaller dechlorinator, so it doesn't have the same gallon per minute ratio that the Big Boy does. So the Small Boy, you would feasibly be filtering water into a tank that you would be using later on. If you have a Merlin unit, your filters are rated about 1,500 gallons. If you add the tall blue before the Merlin to filter out the sediment before it gets to the filter, you will actually extend your filter life to about 4,500 gallons. So it's about 3 times the normal filter life. And that's by adding the tall blue before the Merlin. And again, you would want to use a Flowmaster so you know how many gallons have run through the unit, so you can efficiently change out the filters when it's time to do so. HydroLogic also has the Kdf filter, and the Kdf filter not only works as an excellent filter if you have iron problems, because it's specially designed to block out iron, but it also has the ability to block out chloramine. Things to know when using a reverse osmosis system. If you have parts per million out of your well that is over 1,000 ppm, so you have very hard water, you might want to use a water softener before sending your water to the reverse osmosis system. The water softener essentially exchanges calcium, magnesium, and other iron particles, which are too large for your plant to uptake, and changes them out for salt particles, which are easily filtered out through the reverse osmosis unit. Now the Merlin Garden Pro comes with the carbon filter, but it's very important to know, if you're on well water, you do not need a carbon filter because carbon filters act as dechlorinators. You might want to use a sediment filter instead to extend the life of your filter. The sediment filters work a lot better as a sediment filter than a carbon filter. So if you're on city water, you really want to keep the carbon filter in place to act as a dechlorinator. If your filter is getting to the end of its life and you're trying to figure out which one to replace, it is important to replace the carbon filter or the sediment filter, whichever filter you have running first in the unit, before you replace the others. Without the first filter working to its maximum potential, the other filters will quickly clog up. So if you think it might be time to change your filter, you definitely want to change the pre-filter first. If you have a lot of sediment coming out of your well, you might want to use the tall blue as a pre-filter to the Merlin. The tall blue works excellent as a sediment filter, and it will extend your filter life about 3 times. So your Merlin filters are typically only good to about 1,500 gallons. It will extend their life to up to 4,500 gallons. So the tall blue will save you a lot of money over time as a pre-filter. Now if you have a lot of iron, so you have a lot of orange particles in your filters when you're changing them out, you might want to use the Kdf filter. The Kdf filter is not a cheap filter, but it works 4 times more effectively as a sediment filter, filtering out iron. The Big Boy is one of the most common filters that are purchased as a dechlorinator for city water, and the reason being is because you do not have a loss of pressure. Your water pressure is essentially 7 gallons per minute out of this unit. If you have a lot of chloramine in your water, The big boy filter, after about 500 gallons, starts to lose its efficiency quickly. So you might want to use the Kdf filter. So the big boy unit is only good to about 1,500 gallons as a chloramine filter, but when used with the Kdf filter, it extends the filter's life to 15,000 gallons. It's about 10 times more efficient with the Kdf filter. So if you have a lot of chloramine in your water, you might want to think of getting a Kdf filter, or if you see yourself using the big boy for extended periods of time, you also might want to think of getting a Kdf filter. One of the great features that HydroLogic has put into the Merlin is that it has an automatic shutoff capability. If the Merlin is attached to a reservoir that has a float valve, once the Merlin senses that that float valve has stopped, it feels the pressure in the line and it essentially will stop filtering the water. For those that are concerned of wastewater being an issue when using reverse osmosis systems, you are right. A lot of reverse osmosis systems will continue to drain out wastewater once a float valve has been topped off. So once your reservoir has been topped off, essentially the filter just drains wastewater until you stop the water flow to the filter itself. The Merlin actually has an automatic shutoff built into it that senses the pressure and essentially stops the filter from working. So once the Merlin feels the pressure, it stops the reverse osmosis process. So once the Merlin feels the pressure, when the shutoff valve has been initiated, it stops the reverse osmosis process and stops the drain water. There's an eco waste elbow, and it's a green elbow, and this will save about 25% of the wastewater that's being run off while the reverse osmosis system is working. It is very important to know, though, you do not want to use the eco waste elbow if you have a ppm above 350. Reason being is because it forces more water through the filter. So if you have a ppm above 350, the green elbow might be pushing more water through the filter than what you might want. So if your ppm is above 350, do not use the eco waste elbow. If it is below that, you will be saving water runoff. The small boy is a dechlorinator that works at a rate of 60 gallons per hour and has a 3,000 gallon filter life. The big boy has an amazing flow rate of 420 gallons per hour, so you essentially will not feel a loss of pressure with the big boy when using it as a dechlorinator. But if you have a lot of chloramine in your water, you definitely want a Kdf filter, because though the big boy is rated at a 1,500 gallon filter life, the Kdf will extend that filter life to 15,000. So the Kdf will essentially extend your filter life 10 times. And if you have a lot of chloramine in your water, it will ensure that all that chloramine is filtered out. Again, with all of these units, you should think about purchasing a Flowmaster. That way you know how many gallons have run through your filter. That way you're not changing out your filters before you need to, and vice versa, you're not changing out your filters too late. We also carry the Stealth RO filter from HydroLogic. All of these water filtration units are available at monstergardens.com. Thank you for checking us out.